So I guess this is one of those stories you read at 2 a.m. when you're trying to convince yourself that strangers on the internet are better at listening than the people in your actual life. If you've ever sat in a courtroom and felt your entire existence boiled down to one humiliating sentence, you'll probably understand parts of this. If not, well, just try to imagine standing in front of a judge while the person you once promised forever to publicly calls you incompetent. I didn't plan on writing any of this. I'm a 34-year-old dad, never expected to end up here, and honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how everything spiraled the way it did. But people kept telling me I should talk about it. And the story sort of starts at my lowest point, the divorce hearing where my ex, Emily, basically detonated what was left of my dignity in front of everyone. You know that feeling when someone hits a bruise you didn't even realize you had? That's what it felt like when she stood up, her voice steady, almost rehearsed, and said loudly, "He can't even take care of himself. How could he be a father?" The room went dead still. Even the guy shuffling papers behind us looked up. I didn't say anything, not because she was right, but because I knew if I opened my mouth, I'd either start yelling or break down. Both would have just proved her point. So I stood there in my stupid off-the-rack suit that didn't fit right, hands clenched so tight that my nails dug crescents into my palms. I could feel the judge's eyes on me, waiting for me to defend myself, to give some kind of rebuttal. I felt 30 years of being told I wasn't enough pile onto my shoulders in that one moment. And honestly, I froze. Back then, I was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, trying to keep my head above water. I was dealing with untreated depression I didn't even know how to talk about. And yeah, I wasn't perfect. I'd missed some school pickups. I'd forgotten about a parent-teacher meeting because I was stuck fixing a busted AC unit in a stranger's attic at 8 p.m. But I loved my son more than anything. I was trying, and I guess trying didn't count for much in that courtroom. The judge didn't say anything for a long second. Just this sharp, assessing look, the kind that makes you want to fold in on yourself. I felt like I was 13 again, sitting in the principal's office while my dad told them I was just lazy instead of dyslexic. The same humiliation, the same heat creeping up my neck. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was low, almost disappointed. "Mr. Collins, do you have anything to say in response?" I shook my head. That was it. Just a small, pathetic shake of my head. Emily exhaled like she'd won something. And maybe in that moment, she had. That day ended with her getting primary custody and me walking out with visitation that felt more like supervised pity hours. People assume dads who lose custody must have done something awful. The truth is usually less dramatic. Sometimes you're just not good at advocating for yourself. Sometimes you're not loud enough. Sometimes you don't know how to fight back. After the hearing, Emily barely looked at me. She just walked out with her lawyer, heels clacking like punctuation marks. Our son, Liam, was with her mom that day. He didn't see any of it. Thank God. I drove home with the radio off. I didn't want words. I didn't want noise. I just wanted to disappear into the hum of the tires against the highway. When I got to my apartment, the tiny one-bedroom I'd moved into after she kicked me out, it felt smaller than usual. I sat on the floor because I didn't even own a couch then, and I cried. Not loud, ugly sobs, just this quiet, hopeless kind of crying that feels too heavy for your chest. I remember staring at the papers the court gave me, the official stamp at the bottom, the whole thing feeling like someone had graded my entire life and handed me an F. I kept thinking, maybe she's right. Maybe I really can't take care of myself. But something shifted that night. Not in some inspirational movie, cue dramatic music kind of way. More like this small, stubborn spark I didn't even realize I still had. I kept thinking about Liam. About how he deserved a dad who didn't give up on himself just because someone else already had. So I made a promise, not out loud, because saying it would have made it too real, but silently, in this gritty, exhausted way, I was going to get better, not to prove Emily wrong, not even to get custody back, but because I wanted to be someone my son could look at and think. He never stopped trying. The next morning, I showed up at work early. I asked my boss for more hours. I started therapy. I bought an actual planner because apparently adults are supposed to have those. And I stopped apologizing every time I existed in a room. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't some big glow up. It was slow and uncomfortable and honestly kind of boring. Healing looks like a lot of eating dinner alone and going to bed early and saying no to things because you're tired of falling apart. But a year later, when Emily showed up at my door crying, holding that letter from our son, the one that started with, "Dad, I know what you did for me." That was the moment I realized all those quiet, invisible steps had led somewhere. But I'll get to that. This is just where it starts. Looking back, that first year felt like I was rebuilding myself out of scraps. Not in some dramatic phoenix rising kind of way, more like patching drywall with duct tape and praying it holds. But slowly, things stopped feeling like they were actively falling apart. I started seeing Liam on a more regular schedule. At first, the visits felt awkward, like I was trying to fit into a version of myself I didn't fully recognize yet. He'd show up with a backpack twice his size, hair always perfectly combed. "Emily's doing." And he'd stand there like he wasn't sure if he should hug me or just wave. Those first few weeks destroyed me more than the divorce hearing did. When your own kid looks at you like you're some guest star in his life, it does something to you. But I didn't push him. I just tried to be consistent, something I'd never been great at. I'd take him to the small park near my apartment, the one with the swings that squeaked and the basketball hoop missing a net. He didn't care. Kids never do. He'd run around and talk about school, friends, random facts about dinosaurs he'd memorized. He'd ask me questions about my apartment like it was some exhibit. One afternoon, he asked, "Dad, why don't you have a couch?" I laughed it off at first. "Couches are expensive, bud." He nodded like he understood a lot more than a 7-year-old should. And maybe he did. Around that time, I picked up a side gig doing maintenance work for a property management company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid more than the old place. On weekends when Liam wasn't with me, I spent hours scrubbing walls, fixing garbage disposals, painting chipped doors. It wasn't the kind of work that makes you proud on paper, but there's something grounding about fixing things with your hands when you've spent months feeling broken. I started to look healthier too. Therapy helped. Cutting back on drinking helped more than I expected. My therapist was this blunt older guy named Harris who didn't let me get away with self-pity. The first time I told him what Emily said at the hearing, he just leaned back and said, "All right, and why did you believe her?" I didn't have an answer. Meanwhile, Emily barely spoke to me. Exchanges were stiff, transactional. She'd pull up in her SUV, not even turn off the engine, and Liam would hop out like he was being dropped off at daycare. No small talk. No updates about his life. Nothing. Just this simmering hostility under her breath, like she resented me for still existing. One Sunday, she didn't show up on time. 20 minutes passed. Then 40. Then an hour. Liam sat by the window, swinging his feet, trying so hard not to look disappointed. I texted her twice. No response. Finally, she pulled in, hair a mess, eyes red, like she'd been crying or maybe just exhausted. She opened the door, and Liam ran to her like he always did, this instinctive loyalty kids have for whichever parent they live with. Before she drove off, she said without looking at me, "I'm trying, okay?" That was it. No explanation. No apology. And for the first time, I didn't just quietly absorb the hit. I said, "You don't have to explain it to me. Just explain it to him." She froze for a second, like the thought hadn't even crossed her mind. Then she got in the car and left. I stood there watching the taillights disappear and wondered when the hell we'd both gotten so tired of pretending everything was fine. But things really shifted the day Liam told me he wanted to stay longer. We were sitting on the floor, building a Lego spaceship. He was talking nonstop about some kid in his class who said space wasn't real, and midway through describing his plan to prove him wrong, he just blurted out, "I wish I didn't have to leave today." I didn't say anything at first because I could feel my throat tightening. I didn't want to guilt him or make him feel like he had to choose sides. So I said, "We get more time next week." But he shook his head. "No, I mean, I like it here. It feels quieter." Kids say things like that without knowing the weight of them. But that stuck with me for days. That night, after I dropped him off, I sat in my truck outside Emily's place for longer than I should have. Their living room light was on. I could see silhouettes moving around. Her pacing, her mom handing her something, Liam slipping into the hallway like he didn't want to be in the middle. There was tension in that house. The kind that's loud even through windows. A week later, I got a call from Liam's school. The counselor said he'd been having trouble focusing, worrying about grown-up stuff. She didn't specify, but I knew. Kids don't hide stress as well as adults pretend they do. I wanted to talk to Emily about it, but every time I brought up anything emotional, she'd get defensive. So I focused on what I could control, my time with him. I started cooking real meals instead of ordering takeout. I bought a secondhand couch from a guy on Facebook Marketplace who smelled like gasoline and kept calling me chief. But hey, it was a couch. I turned the spare corner of my apartment into a little desk area for Liam with a lamp shaped like a rocket. He loved it. I started noticing the way he'd relax when he walked into my place, like he could finally breathe. At the same time, Emily seemed more frazzled every week. She was losing weight. Her voice had this brittle edge to it. Once, when she dropped Liam off, her hands were shaking. I asked if she was okay. She snapped, "I'm fine," then immediately looked like she regretted saying it. And then, the letter happened. It was a normal Wednesday. I was making dinner, overcooked pasta, because I'm consistent like that, when someone knocked on my door. Not the impatient kind of knock. This one was hesitant, almost trembling. When I opened it, Emily was standing there, mascara streaked, clutching a folded piece of paper like it was a lifeline. She didn't speak at first. She just held it out. Her voice cracked when she said, "He wrote this. He wrote it at school. And I didn't. I didn't know. I didn't want to know." I took the letter. My hands were shaking too now. The first line hit me like a punch. "Dad, I know what you did for me." I didn't open the letter right away. I stood there with it in my hand, the paper still warm from Emily's grip, and for a second I honestly didn't trust myself. Words from your kid, your quiet, thoughtful kid who never says anything unless he means it, can be heavier than anything a courtroom can throw at you. Emily stepped into my apartment without asking, like she forgot we weren't that kind of couple anymore. She looked around, eyes darting over the couch, the little desk set up, the half-finished dinner on the stove. She noticed the blanket Liam always used on the couch, the framed drawing he made me that said me and Daddy and our big space car, even though it looked more like a potato with wheels. Her lip trembled. I didn't know it looked like this. She said it quietly, like she was confessing something. I didn't answer. I didn't know what I could say that wouldn't either sound defensive or petty. The truth was simple. She never asked. She never wanted to know what my life looked like after she left. She sank into the chair at the table like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. For the first time in maybe 2 years, her face wasn't hard or dismissive or annoyed. She looked scared and tired. God, she looked so tired. "Can you just read it?" she said, voice raw. So I did. I unfolded the paper slowly. It was written in pencil, Liam's careful handwriting. He always erased too hard, so parts of the paper were soft and worn. At the top, he'd drawn a little rocket, because of course he had. The letter was dated 2 days earlier. "Dad, I know what you did for me. My teacher said we could write about someone we're proud of. I picked you. I didn't show Mom because I was scared she'd get mad, but she found it anyway. I know you work a lot, and I know you get tired. I hear Mom say things sometimes. But I see how you try. I see how you make dinner even when it's not good. I see how you clean everything before I come over so it smells nice. I see how you draw me things even though you're bad at drawing. I see how you listen when I talk. You really listen. When I was sick last month, I heard Mom on the phone saying you probably wouldn't come. But you came. You stayed with me and held my hand until I fell asleep. I didn't tell anyone, but I wasn't scared anymore after that. I know what you did for me. You didn't leave. Ever. Even when you could have. I love you, Dad." By the time I got to the last line, the page was shaking so hard I had to put it down. I didn't cry, which shocked me. I just sat there with this tight ache in my chest, like my heart was trying to beat through concrete. Across from me, Emily was crying silently, both hands covering her mouth like she was ashamed of the sounds she didn't want to make. "He wrote it at school," she said. "His counselor said he was carrying a lot, and I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it. I didn't know what to say. For once, it wasn't my job to comfort her. She wasn't my responsibility anymore. But she was still the mother of my kid, and the woman I had once trusted enough to build a life with. That leaves marks." She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "I've been messing up. I know I have. I know I haven't been fair." That was putting it lightly. But I didn't interrupt. "I thought making everything harder for you was the safer option," she said. "For me. For him. I thought if I kept controlling everything, it would keep everything from blowing up. But all I did was push him into the middle." I leaned against the counter, arms folded, trying to keep my breathing steady. "Emily, I don't want to fight with you. I never did. I just wanted to be his dad." "I know." Her voice cracked again. "And I didn't let you." For a moment, it felt like the universe paused. Just a quiet apartment. The kind of quiet that forces honesty out of people. She looked at me then, not like an enemy, but like someone who finally saw the person she'd been refusing to look at. I'm not okay, she finally admitted. And this past year I've been pretending I am. My mom's sick again. Work is a mess. I barely sleep. I, I yell too much. And he hears it. I know he hears it. I didn't expect her to say that. Emily never admitted weakness when we were together. She hated feeling out of control. What do you want me to do? I asked, and it wasn't sarcastic. It was genuine. She reached for the letter again, fingers lingering on the paper like it physically hurt her. He needs you. More than I thought. More than I wanted to admit. And I think maybe you should. I don't know, have more time with him. Or it's something. I don't know what the right thing is anymore. That hit me like a freight train. Are you saying you want to change custody? She swallowed hard. I think I need to. For him. I didn't answer at first. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. Or the right thing too fast. I'd spent so long believing she'd rather die than loosen her grip on anything. But she wasn't lying. I could see it. The exhaustion. The remorse. The fear. And under all of that, the realization that Liam had chosen love over bitterness. Kids always know who's fighting for them, even when adults don't see it. Finally, I said, let's do what's best for him. Together. Emily nodded, breaking again, but in a quieter way this time. Not dramatic. Not manipulative. Just real. He loves you, she whispered. I looked down at the letter, at the uneven pencil strokes and smudged corners. I know, I said. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. But what happened after that? How everything shifted, how Liam opened up, how Emily finally unraveled enough to ask for help. That's its own storm. And it didn't calm down right away. This letter was just the start of the reckoning. Things didn't magically fall into place after that night. Real life doesn't work like that. There wasn't some movie montage moment with uplifting music where everything suddenly made sense. What happened instead was messier, slower, complicated, full of uncomfortable conversations and even more uncomfortable silences. After Emily left that night, I sat at my kitchen table for almost an hour with the letter in front of me. I kept rereading the lines like they were written in disappearing ink, terrified they'd fade if I blinked. I didn't even eat the dinner I'd made. I just sat there letting the words sink into every part of me that had been bruised for years. The next day, Emily texted me. Not the usual clipped, rigid messages. Just, can we talk tonight? About everything. Those everything conversations always used to end in arguments. But this time, I felt calmer. Maybe because the letter had shifted the ground under both of us. When I got to her place later that night, the first thing I noticed was how dim it was inside. The blinds were half closed, dishes piled in the sink, laundry on the couch. It didn't look disastrous, but for Emily, the woman who color-coded her pantry, it was basically a red flag wrapped in another red flag. Her mom was sitting on the recliner, frail, wrapped in a blanket. She looked worse than I remembered. Emily introduced me quietly, like she didn't want to wake a sleeping animal, even though her mom was awake, staring blankly at a game show on low volume. We stepped into the kitchen. Emily leaned against the counter like she needed the support. I haven't been doing well, she said. I think you already know that. I nodded. Yeah, I should have told you, she said. But I was embarrassed and angry, and I didn't want you to feel like I needed you. That last part hit me harder than I expected, because it was true. Emily always had this thing where needing anyone felt like weakness, especially needing me. She crossed her arms, rubbing them like she was cold. I thought keeping things difficult for you would. I don't know, protect me somehow. Protect Liam. But it just made everything worse. There was a long pause, the kind where every version of the past sits between you, waiting to be acknowledged. I asked gently, what do you want to change? She took a breath that sounded like it hurt. I think Liam should stay with you more. Maybe half the week, maybe more than half. She hesitated. I can't give him what he needs right now. It didn't feel triumphant or victorious or vindicating. It felt sad, heavy, like we were both mourning something we didn't even know we'd lost. I'm not trying to take him from you, I said. She shook her head quickly. I know, and that's why I'm saying this. We spent 2 hours talking. Real talking. The kind we never managed when we were married. She admitted she'd been overwhelmed taking care of her mom, worrying about bills, dealing with a supervisor at work who seemed to enjoy making her life miserable. She'd been emotionally exhausted for months, trying to hold up this collapsing structure while pretending everything was fine. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she said quietly. I was trying to survive. And I believed her. The next few weeks were chaotic in a way that actually meant progress. We talked to a mediator, adjusted custody, slowly shifted Liam's schedule, so he spent 4 days a week with me, 3 with her. Emily started therapy. Her mom moved into an assisted living facility with better care. And Liam, he changed too. It was subtle at first. He laughed more, slept better, drew pictures of our 2 homes, without making one obviously better or bigger than the other. He started asking if he could help cook dinner, even though all he really did was stir things too fast and spill half the ingredients. He'd come into my room early in the morning just to say goodnight because he mixed up the words sometimes. One night he told me, "I like that you don't yell." I swear I felt my heart splinter. Not because of pride, because of what that meant about the yelling he'd been hearing somewhere else. I called Emily that night, not to accuse her, not to fight, just to tell her, he's carrying a lot, maybe more than we realized. She cried quietly on the other end, but she listened. The weirdest part of all this was that we started functioning like a team, something we never managed when we were married. The resentment wasn't gone, not completely, but it wasn't driving either of us anymore. One Friday, when I dropped Liam off, Emily stayed outside with me on the porch after he ran inside. She looked different, softer, tired, but less brittle. "He's happier," she said. "I can see it." "So are you," I replied. She looked down, kicking at a loose bit of concrete. "It's weird. I feel lighter now that I'm not pretending everything's under control." "That's kind of the whole trick," I said. "Letting go of the pretending." She laughed a little. "A real one. You're different too. More steady." "Trying to be," I said. There was a moment, a strange one, where it felt like we were standing in the ruins of our marriage, looking around and realizing it hadn't all been destroyed for nothing. Something new was growing out of it, something we weren't ready for back then. The most surprising part was Liam's school counselor calling me after a few weeks of the new arrangement. She said he'd been more engaged, more confident. "He talks about you a lot," she said. "He talks about how hard you try." That stuck with me. Not because I wanted to be praised, but because for years I thought my effort wasn't visible to anyone. Turns out, kids see everything, especially the quiet things. The night everything officially shifted, legally, emotionally, practically, was the night Liam asked if he could leave some of his clothes at my place, because it feels like home too. I didn't respond right away because I felt that old ache again, the one that started the night of the divorce hearing. But this time, it wasn't pain, it was something closer to relief. He looked up at me with those big brown eyes that always reminded me of his baby photos and said, "Is that okay?" I said, "Yeah, bud. That's more than okay." And the truth? That was the moment I realized the story wasn't about losing or winning custody. It wasn't about Emily's breakdown or my slow climb out of a hole I'd buried myself in. It was about a kid who loved both his parents enough to be honest, and a letter that forced both of us to see what he'd been holding inside. But the real turning point, the one that changed everything for good, happened a few weeks later when Emily showed up at my door again. This time, she wasn't crying. This time, she had something none of us expected. The night Emily came by again, I almost didn't answer the door. Not because I didn't want to see her, but because I'd just gotten Liam to sleep and was half asleep myself on the couch with some documentary playing quietly in the background. When she knocked, soft, barely there, I thought it was a delivery mix-up. When I opened the door, she stood there holding a folder. No tears, no shaking hands. Just this strange calmness that made me instantly uneasy because I'd learned that Emily being calm usually meant she'd rehearsed something difficult. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside to let her in. She walked in slowly, looking around like she always did these days, not in judgment, but in observation, like she wanted to understand the space her son was living in. She sat on the couch and placed the folder on the coffee table, hands folded on top of it. "Before I say anything," she began, "I want you to know this isn't about guilt. We're trying to fix the past. It's just what's right." That sentence alone was enough to make the air feel heavier. She opened the folder and slid a stack of papers toward me. I recognized the format immediately. Custody modification forms. "Emily," I said slowly, "we already agreed on the new schedule. It's been working." "I know," she cut in, but gently. "This is different." There was a pause where she looked down at her hands, as if she needed one last moment of courage. "I want you to have primary custody." I didn't react at first. I just stared at her, trying to understand if I'd heard her right. The words didn't make sense in my mind. Emily had fought tooth and nail a year earlier to keep full control, out of fear, out of habit, out of whatever tangled emotions the end of a marriage breeds. And now, she was handing it over. Why? Was all I managed to get out. She exhaled, long and shaky. Because I finally see what he needs. And because I finally see what I wasn't seeing. She started talking then, truly talking, and I didn't interrupt. She told me about the nights she'd cry in the bathroom so Liam wouldn't hear. About the guilt that built up every time she snapped at him over small things because she was drowning in stress from work and her mom's health. She said she'd watched the way he was when he came home from my place. Lighter, more open, more himself. He loves me, she said. I don't doubt that. But he's calmer with you, happier. And I had to stop pretending that wasn't the truth. She wiped her palms on her jeans, not to hide tears this time, but almost in relief. You're the steadier parent right now. And he needs steady. Something inside me cracked open at that. Not like breaking, but like releasing something I didn't realize I'd been holding in. You don't have to do this, I said, because I felt like I needed to give her that out. We can keep working together. You don't have to give up time with him. Emily shook her head. This isn't giving up. This is choosing what's healthiest. And I'll still have him. I'll still be his mom. But you built something with him this year that I didn't. And it's not because you tried harder than me. It's because he felt safe with you during a time when I wasn't stable enough to make him feel safe. Her voice didn't break. She wasn't coming from a place of desperation this time. She was grounded, clear, strong in a way people only get when they stop running from their own reflection. She pointed at the papers. I already signed my part. I can revoke it if I need to, so it's not binding yet. But if you sign, we can submit it together. I looked down at the forms. My hands hovered over them like they might burn me. The idea of being Liam's primary parent felt both like the fulfillment of something I'd longed for quietly and the start of a responsibility heavier than anything I'd carried. What did he say? I asked, needing to know. Emily smiled softly. It was small, sad, but genuine. He said he wants to live with you more. Not because he doesn't love me, but because he said, Dad doesn't get mad about the things I don't know how to do yet. I closed my eyes for a moment. That one hit hard. Kids don't choose sides. They choose gentleness. You're not a bad mom, I said quietly. She nodded. I know. I'm just not the mom he needs most right now. And that's okay. We sat there for a long time. No yelling. No bitterness. No scorekeeping. Just two people who had loved each other once, now loving a kid more than they disliked each other. In that moment, the past didn't matter. The divorce hearing didn't matter. Her words, he can't even take care of himself, didn't feel like shackles anymore. They were old echoes. What mattered was the boy sleeping in the next room, trusting both of us to make choices he couldn't make for himself. I signed the papers. Emily watched quietly, and when I put the pen down, she let out a breath that seemed to unravel months of tension from her shoulders. Thank you, she whispered. For what? I asked. For not rubbing it in. For not hating me. For being who Liam sees when he looks at you. We talked a little more about logistics, schedules, holidays, but it all felt strangely peaceful. When she finally stood to leave, she paused at the door. You're a good father, she said. I was wrong last year. I'm not proud of it, but I'm glad I can say it now. After she left, I went into Liam's room. He was curled up on his side, clutching his stuffed rocket. His breathing was soft and steady, the kind of steady that had taken both of us a year to build. I sat on the edge of the bed, brushing his hair back gently, and I thought about how close I'd come to believing the worst version of myself. How a single sentence in a courtroom nearly convinced me I didn't deserve to be someone's parent. But kids don't care about your worst moments. They care about the consistency of your presence. Before I turned off the light, I whispered, I'm here, bud. I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was saying it to convince myself. I meant it. If you made it all the way to the end, thanks for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the story, consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. It helps me share more stories like this. Thanks.